Out there once again. It's your boy AK coming to you with episode number 14 of the Real Talk with AK. And on this episode, I'll actually be joined by Tisetso Namane and Mofenyi Muela. And I think by now you already know my co-host, Peaches, the girl with the vibe. Okay, so guys, on today's episode, we'll actually be talking about polygamy and polyandry. As in most cases, most of us are already aware that SA is in the process of passing a legislation that will actually see the other gender be able to marry, like, two husbands. So we'll actually be discussing those things on today's episode. But before I actually do that, I'll actually give my guests the platform to actually introduce themselves. I'll actually start with my lady, Tisetso Kamu.
Hi, my name is Tisetso Masingi, and I'm a junior FA and still studying.
Welcome to the show, Tisetso.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hello everyone, my name is Mofenyi Muela. I'm actually or currently a criminology student, and hopefully I'll pursue something from there on going forward. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Okay, introduction, right?
Oh no, I don't. They know me already, right?
Okay, guys. Okay, let me actually kick off the show with getting your views about this whole thing surrounding polygamy, in terms of what's your view with it? Do you actually support it or you are against it? So any one of you can actually start.
I won't say I am for or against polygamy, but I would just say it's been such a normality in the Black community, especially culturally. Polygamy is something that we're used to, it's not new to us. And then polyandry, I feel like it's a bit tricky because, according to me, it's just in support of challenging or opposing Black culture and Black tradition, which doesn't differ from the narrative of us being colonized. The whole process of us being colonized is basically to dilute everything that we know about ourselves as Black people, and then to bring in this new way of us living. And then you know what I mean? I won't say polygamy is a traditional thing, and when it's done accordingly, it is not hurtful to anyone. When it is used as a tool to promote cheating, it's a totally different story. So yeah, according to my great-grandfather, when I asked him about polygamy, he explained to me that you don't marry a second wife out of fun or because you find them attractive. When you take in a second wife, it's because maybe the first wife gave you daughters only as a man. So we all know in Black culture the surname is, by a male son.
Yes.
So you will only take a second wife if your first wife gave you only daughters or your first wife is too old to do anything. Remember, we used to do farming and so on. So if your first wife can no longer go and do the farming and whatever, and you want her to rest, then you go to the elders and you ask them for a second wife, and then it is done traditionally. Not to say you start cheating, now all of a sudden it's polygamy. That's not it. That's disrespectful to Black culture, actually, if anything.
And to add on what you're saying, I think this is from my view.
Yeah.
The reason why polyandry is now being something that's brought into the table, especially in our country, is primarily because South Africa's constitution and its freedom is still young.
Yeah.
So it would be unfair to support one thing instead of actually endorsing another. It's like there's a difference between equity and equality.
Yeah.
These are two different words, but when we pronounce them, we all think it relates to the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think there should be a balance and scale in terms of saying, if polygamy is something that has been in existence in our Black culture, then why must we not give women the same equity, not equality, equity to men? So coming to her point, polygamy also came from a philosophical standpoint. Why am I saying this? It's primarily because back then, sometimes she made a point in saying sometimes you get daughters from your first wife, and sometimes you find that the first wife is actually barren. And so taking on a second wife, it also has an effect. In time, it actually evolved. There were some cultures, I think if I read correctly, there are some cultures in Africa that actually took polygamy as a form of showing their social status quo and saying, this is my wife. This is why I have I can manage two wives, 3 wives, 4 wives, a number of wives because of I have the money to do so. So I think it's actually a broad context. But if we were to dwell into more specifics, I think we would actually come to an understanding of where we are actually heading when this thing is entirely introduced.
But do you think, as a South African man in most cases, are we ready for your this whole thing of polyandry? Because like one thing I've seen on social media platforms lately, it's more like with us niggas it's a joke, like you know.
It's not that serious.
Yeah, it's just that So do you actually think that this legislation will actually pass?
We all have an African saying that says 2 bulls cannot be in the same crowd.
Definitely.
For an example, I think South Africa has also become such a can I say an emotionally sensitive country now. Why am I saying this? For an example, let's take a simple example. If let's say I'm dating DC and I cheat on her, and then I beg for her forgiveness and then she forgives me. The moment she starts cheating, she'll see my tears. She'll be like, but this thing, what she has done to me is completely wrong and it's hurtful, but without considering what I've done to her in the past. You understand what I'm saying? So I don't think, for the mere fact that polygamy has decreased in our country, I don't think it would have much effect in terms of reality. I don't know.
You know what I think? Okay, firstly, I need you to explain to me the meaning of equity when you say women are supposed to be given the same equity. I don't know what that means.
Yes. Okay. This is. Let me put an illustration. When we all say, when you mention the word equity and equality, let's say equality. When we talk about equality, let's say, for an example, we have a wall that's standing up, and then we all want to see on the other side of the wall. AKAY is the tallest. Let's say my height is at mid, and Peaches is the shortest. And then we're all given the same boxes, same size, same height to stand on. Peaches would be still at an advantage because we're all given an equal amount, but we're not given according to what we require. For an example, when we delve in equity, then that means that because AKAY is the tallest and he can see over the wall, then because I'm mid, he doesn't need the box and I can stand on top of that.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was actually referring to.
It's more like it's based on value.
Yes.
Okay. I think the first thing that we need to break down in order for us to understand how I believe polyandry is not gonna it will be past everything.
Yes.
I mean, we do live in a country where we have a democracy, but if we're being honest, our leaders are tyrants. Okay, they tell us what they're going to do. They don't ask for anything. So there's a big difference. And also we have a government that would rather be politically correct than to be realistically correct. So now the problem of polyandry, and this is really just me, I'm not attacking anyone, but I don't think it will succeed in reality. A lot of things look good on paper and they look good in theory. Just the same way as we would think, I would like to believe I'm the same as him. No, we're not. That's why I carry and he plants a seed. We all have different strengths. So if me as a woman, this also goes back to, the feminists and all of that. If me as a woman, I want to say, I'm just as powerful as AKAY. In reality, I'm taking my power and I'm diluting it to what he is. Okay, it's a big difference. So when you understand your power as a woman, you don't feel the need to compare it to a man. You will never feel the need to do that because you are aware that we could never be the same. But we do need each other to function. the thought of a woman saying, but I carry a child, so I'm more powerful, is insane. Because without a sperm, what are you carrying? There's nothing to carry. So we all need each other, but women are more feminine. If you understand what being a woman and what being feminine is, then you understand how I can coexist with Peaches, as opposed to AKAY coexisting with you. Because guys are masculine. Guys move more in ego, as opposed to women. Women move according to intuition. That's the difference between all of us. Women are more dominated by my hormones and so on. So if I am put in a room and I'm supposed to believe, oh yeah, I can call myself a king. When the whole feminism thing changed and women started calling themselves king, it was women admitting that men are more powerful, as opposed to women empowering the term queen. Women started saying they're kings. That's why now we would say, yeah, I want to marry 2 husbands. We're different. When I marry 2 husbands, when I have 2 kids, whose surname do the kids take?
Exactly.
It's disrespectful to my ancestors as well. We cannot just move as black people, like we're like white or Asian or whatever else. We move according as well. We have to respect our ancestors and so on, because a lot of things that are not understood these days, you could understand if you took the time to sit down with your elders as a black child and ask and find out. Then you will get the guidance that you need. That's why I don't see, when the whole topic of polyandry came to the scene, I looked at my dad and I didn't see him sharing the space around. I didn't, because he struggles with, he has to assert himself as a father to his sons. You understand? Even when you're a son, you test boundaries sometimes with your dad. You try and see it. Like, I'm a man now, I'm grown and all of that. But you see, when a man is not like, nah, it doesn't work like that because he's a father. So if now it's a husband, as a wife, as a sister wife, if she's the first wife and I'm the second wife, I listen to her. I don't know if AKAY is going to be my first husband. Are you going to listen to him when he says, do the dishes? It's not going to work. It's going to be so challenging. And I saw the talks on how guys will actually start to harm each other. There will be so much of abuse in the household of the 2 men. If it's still domestic abuse, there's just so much that is going to unfold because of this. I'm not promoting guys, please. What I'm not promoting is guys cheating and saying it's polygamy. That's not what I'm promoting. However, we need to understand where it started. And now how it developed and transcended to it being an ego thing, a status thing. Where now I'm like, I have money, I can take 5 wives. As opposed to it being helpful to your first wife. Remember, our grandparents really loved their wife. It was a different way that they loved.
And a different life as well.
Exactly. So now it's different because everything is in people's faces. Now I take a picture of what I'm eating. I take a picture of what I'm fitting. I'm not going to buy it, but I go into the fitting. You take pictures of every little thing because it's like, if you don't take a picture or a video, it didn't happen. So if this whole thing stopped if social media disappeared, you will find that sometimes people won't even know what to talk about. So now, exactly, you know what I mean? So now, no one is going to discuss polyandry and polygamy in a larger scale because now they don't have the support of Smangma, who's in Cape Town, saying, yes, let's pass it. And she's with one husband, she's busy cooking for her husband in the kitchen, and she's on Twitter saying, yes, take more husbands. And her life is at harmony with her one husband and their kids and their family is all good and well. So I think a lot of things, like the youth of today, we just take on too much of what other people are saying to us, as opposed to us going back to our elders and finding out how they lived.
And to add on what you're saying, basically from what I'm hearing from you is that, and this is from my understanding, our entire constitution, we can classify it in a way as a law. There are certain things that you can do and there are certain things that you can't do. But sometimes we need to understand that sometimes rules or laws are never in touch with reality. And it becomes such a problem primarily because if for example, once it's passed, we're still going to have a different interpretation of
the law.
Yes, primarily because you'd say, yes, then we both look for a loophole that is advantageous to you or to me in some ways, if not others. I remember actually listening to a traditionalist when he delved into the topic of polygamy, the origin of it. And he puts it in a very philosophical context. He starts off by saying a man should have 2 wives. He starts off by that. So obviously, by the time a person listens to that, you're like, okay, black people. So this is how it started all of a sudden. No, he said a man should have 2 wives. Then he goes on explaining that the first wife will never abandon you. The first wife will never let you starve. The first wife will do anything and everything that it takes. But most importantly, where you found your first wife, you will find her there. She'll never move nowhere. The second wife will always and always listen to your first wife. When he starts breaking it down, he starts explaining and actually saying, when I refer to the first wife, I actually refer to land. Our African culture is for an example, the concept now it's bringing us back to the concept of lobola. Yeah. And then before a man can actually take up a wife, you need to have a land, you need to have cattle, and this was back then. So in modern times, as a man, you need to establish yourself to a point whereby you have a house and everything, and anything that a wife may need to create a house or home, she can find it at your first wife, which is the actual place where you are. So in understanding the philosophy of the entire thing, we can dwell deeper into understanding that yes, it exists, but this is what it actually means, and it becomes more of a moral lesson than a broader context. That's just my view on the thing.
I quickly want to go back to the first question again, specifically to you. Are you for polyandry or not? Can you just establish that quick?
Honestly, I'm not. I guess this is personally, I'm quite territorial.
Okay.
I'm quite territorial.
So this is coming from an African man.
Yes, I'm quite territorial. For an example, sometimes things tend to get lit out of no reason. If I'm dating someone and then she's standing with the guy and they've been talking for more than 5 minutes. 5 minutes is way too long. I'm like, what the hell are you guys talking about in 5 minutes? So imagine a household. Now imagine a household of the one guy fighting over the actual wife's attention, while the other one sits on the side and is like, when is my time coming?
Do you actually remember there was like a time back then, back generation, when do you remember they actually showed they actually tried showing us like like a polyandry won't work, because there was that scene, like that video has been trending even lately, where the Umukhalo was like, their birthdays, their holidays, vacations, those are things we actually need to take into consideration. As a guy, okay, my queen is our birthday as so how about the other guy into the picture? Do you see how it becomes a problem? Exactly. So when I'm also against it, it's something it won't work. And the reason I'm saying this is because like we are normalizing a lot of things that we aren't supposed to be normalizing.
Is this because we're Africans?
Just because you can do something doesn't mean shit. You can kill a person doesn't mean that you
This whole concept of polyandry, actually, it's all about women fighting for equality with men, like she said, Wansola. That I can agree with.
Being in the same position.
Sorry, but you know what else that I realized? When the women that are in support of polyandry they do it from like an aggressive place. It's never like, oh yes, I love 2 men. No, it's like, yeah, we should be the same as men. Like, yeah, why not? It's from such an aggressive place, which just shows you, it's rooted to a point where if you take that girl and she goes for counseling and she goes for healing for whatever trauma that she went through, her entire narrative would possibly change. So you look at that as well, and you look at, society is in a very weird place right now, and honestly, if you don't define a lot of things for yourself, you're going to fall for every little thing that you find online and because I remember even on generations now, Kahabo, they're like, yeah, before you sleep with this one, you must get cleansed. And then after this one, you must get cleansed. And then You understand even what that does to the women? It's like, okay, so what now? I'm a ball of like dirt. I have to be cleansed every time I have sex with a woman with another man. Then no. So it has so much more impact, even psychologically, you know, because there's the narrative of guys, like if a guy is angry with the girlfriend for whatever reason, she's been having an attitude the whole day, and so bonisa in the bedroom. Now you go and you bonisa the girl in the bedroom, the wife, she's your wife, and then she's also his wife. You are bonising her, and then you also are gonna bonisa her. Is she really going to survive? Like honestly, no. Like I just don't think.
Just to be on the fair side of this, name. Just to be on the fair side.
Yes.
I want to ask this question to every one of us right now.
Yes.
Have we actually sat down with women that actually support this? Honestly, have we actually sat down with them, or are we just concluding what we think they feel?
I actually had the privilege to actually sit down with one, and what her justification, if I may put it, I think in the proper sense, if I were to use the word justification, was that because we've been through this journey of polygamy, we are finally given the opportunity as women to finally understand where men have been in their position in terms of polygamy. But then again, it becomes a question of dominance. I started asking, I was like, okay, fine. You marry two men. Who is actually going to be the head of the house? One of the two or you? But that's the thing. But that's the thing. Now it becomes a question of who is classified as the head of the house. Now it brings us back to the conversation of women being independent, women being empowered. Now we are trying to understand, what do women interpret when they say women are empowered? Does it necessarily mean that it applies universally even at home? Where at home now it becomes this thing of, I'm a woman, I understand my role, and this is my role as a woman. And if me and my husband or me and my partner have an understanding on how to treat each other and the position that we are in this relationship, then everything will work out just fine. But now, when you put in a third man, primarily because of men, we know we have pride, we know we have now it becomes a question of who is, take note, you're married to two men. Now you have to play referee between two men. Now I'm starting to ask the question of who will be the head of the house? One of the two men or you as the wife? And so that's where she started becoming baffled in the situation, saying, no, the first husband would be on this. Then I'm saying, then what is the point? It's like you're basically asking this guy that, okay, first husband said this, so you'll have to wait. I'll get back to you in some ways, if not others. Now you have to create a schedule in your time as the wife. So I think that's why I'm saying, and it goes back to what Diseta was actually explaining and saying that rules may be there, but they will not be or always be in touch with reality. And that was just my view.
Just to add on that, and what he's saying, like, I don't think as a woman right now, we actually need to consider the fact time. As a guy, we actually need time with that dynamic. So when, as a person, you need your own time. I thought there won't actually be time for like the girl or woman to actually like have time for herself and so in most cases, because now it's more like AKAY, she's needed at that side. She also has wife duties. So just imagine playing
wife duties. Yeah. Wife duties.
I'm not supporting polyandry. However, women are not incapable of doing what men do. Okay?
Yeah.
We are not incapable.
That's why
A woman, listen, you guys, listen, you don't understand what a woman can do.
You don't get it.
No, a woman,
I do.
understand what you're saying. When you say a woman has to do her job and a woman has to have time for her husband, and she has to explain this to the first husband, that's what a husband would do with the first wife.
Yes.
Regardless of if it's a man or a woman, you still have to come to me as the first wife. Tell me, listen, I'm thinking we should buy a house in Little Falls.
Yes.
And then when I say, okay, yeah, I think it's okay, you will go discuss it with the second wife. That is what would happen if it was a woman as well.
But
I would think
guys,
so. You would have to respect that that's how
guy's
things are happening.
perspective,
However, the only challenge that would come, I don't think, okay, the having of two husbands, the problem would come when the egos are on.
Exactly.
Egos are always in
But
play.
now,
That's the thing.
the biggest challenge for me only comes when innocent kids are going to be affected by such.
Yes.
As far as whose surname are they taking?
Yes. Yes.
And as well as the mother having to be the mother of the kids and also a wife to you guys. Men are not okay. Men are there in their kids' lives, but not as a mother is. So yes, probably both of you husbands are going to take the back seat, and the wife will focus on the kids and bringing up the kids, and you guys will play a role as well. But it doesn't.
Sorry.
Yes.
But is it fair to say that some men are actually more of mothers than some mothers are mothers?
Yes, that does happen, and sometimes that could be part of a reason why a woman decides to take another husband, because my husband, we're going to have a fair conversation where we're not only being one side.
Yes.
You know, a woman can do that. There are very feminine men out there, and there are very masculine men.
Yes.
And sometimes, as a woman, one day I like a very masculine guy, and the next I just want a relaxed guy that is very soft and gentle. And so it could happen that my husband is a very dominant person, but my second husband is a very feminine person.
And the feminine one is the one who takes care of the kids.
Of the kids and the home.
But to what
My
end?
God.
I mean, guys. I mean, okay. Maybe this is coming from me, but our world is modernizing so much to a point where there is no longer. For example, back then we used to think that a woman's position in an office is the reception.
Yeah.
Now women are actually taking. You understand what I'm saying?
Managers, so that's all over.
Right. Now let's be practical and say, let's take me and AKAY for an example. We are sharing a wife, and the wife is the CEO of a company, and she knocks off so late at times.
Yeah.
What are the odds that when we start knocking off work, let's say for an example, AKAY knocks off early, and I come shortly afterwards, it's going to be AKAY's responsibility to cover certain things within the household. Prepare food and everything, to make an example. Fetch kids and all that. By the time I come, I would have to look for duties, so that when the wife starts to come in, she feels that I'm finally home. Now, it brings us to a point where, is it really realistic in our country? Considering the fact that our country is now pushing towards a point where they're like, I think it's time we actually get ourselves a female president. A female president.
A female president.
Yeah, not really.
No,
We're not ready for a female president?
No, we're not there yet. Please leave.
Not there yet.
that would be a topic for another day.
Topic for another day.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. If our country is heading towards that particular direction, is polyandry actually realistic in our country, considering how modern we are becoming, how much we are evolving, and how much our constitution
I think the
is
problem
opening up?
I think the problem is, the only problem I would have with polyandry is that it is literally a script to African culture. It's literally super disrespectful to African culture. It's saying, no, you're not black. You are Western, you are modernized, you're not organized, you're not Tonga in that case. What it's trying to do is dilute everything else. That's the problem that I have with all of this, is that we as Africans, we as, where we are as a country, black kids, we are so comfortable with people coming from outside and telling us how our ways of living or how our ancestors' way of living are so wrong, and how we're supposed to listen to their ways of living. And the problem now becomes, even if the Western ways are told to us, it's not like all of it. It's bits and pieces. Like, oh yeah, you can take 2 wives, you can take 2 husbands, but they don't show you everything else. They just show you, and they don't show you things that they do or they practice. They don't. They show you what you would like, what is appetizing to you, and what seems politically correct, and what seems as empowering to a woman, or what's empowering to a generation, or what's empowering to a certain society. I don't.
We've been talking about like this and ever since this show actually started.
Yes.
So right now I would actually like us to shift our focus from like what we've been talking about, and actually look at like this thing of like polygamy from like a relationships perspective, like in most cases, because like there have been cases where women who were actually involved in such marriages have come forward with claims of being abused, such things. So, do you actually think like polygamy actually contributes to like the high rate of abuse like that we have as a country right now?
In my perspective, I'd say yes and no, but I'd actually lean more on the yes side. And this is primarily because, remember, when you take let's not even go as far as marriage. Let's just take a typical example as a relationship. You start dating a girl for the first time, and then after some time, you bring in another girl in the mix. It does not matter what you may think, your girlfriend might think. In her, she'd be like, but he's actually my man. Now the term "my" becomes territorial. This is my position. I came here first. So when the second wife comes into play, she has to yield to almost anything and everything that the first wife has to say. And at that point in time, the husband has to play referee as well, in saying, no, you don't have to. Wait, no. It is pointless. But the abuse side of it may not come in a physical sense, but it mostly comes in an emotional sense. Sometimes when we classify the word or we use the term abuse, we think it's only physical,
yes.
When it is not. A person can be depressed primarily from how they understand you communicate with them.
Yes.
Remember, the term communication means the term understanding means if I communicate something with you and you understand it, then that means it has been communicated to that point. But now, if people do not understand that, then they're actually going to use this term as to fulfill their own nefarious purposes, if not others. If you understand what I'm saying, it becomes a reaction out of spite and not out of any genuine intent. So that's just my point of view in things. It most likely becomes an abusive thing. Not physically, but emotionally.
But now, okay, then the question becomes, does the abuse come from the husband or does it come from the first wife? If the abuse is from the second wife having to yield to whatever the first, does it come from the husband or is it rooted from the first wife?
I personally think it becomes rooted from the first wife.
Okay.
Why am I saying, and this is again my thoughts on the matter. Women have been put in a position whereby they finally understand that if I want something, I'm gonna get it, and it's literally going to be mine. You understand what I'm saying? Now, the abuse power comes into play primarily because when let's say for an example, I take the second wife. Psychologically, the first wife is gonna be like, so what have I been doing all this time in your life? If reasons are not clear, communicated properly, or unknown, the likelihood that the first wife is actually going to abuse the second wife are extremely high. The probability of it is extremely high. So that's why I'm saying it's mostly going to be rooted from the first wife, primarily because she'll feel as though she's being replaced, or whatever her inadequacies are, they'll actually be filled in whatever gap it is that she has in the household.
So
she thinks exactly. Then the second wife will actually fill it in. So that's why I'm saying it's mostly going to come from this first wife. I don't think it would come from the husband primarily because the husband took the initiative of actually pulling another wife.
So you don't think the husband would pose abuse into the marriage?
In a polygamous relationship, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Well,
that is deep. that is deep.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that as far as the abuse is concerned, and it coming from, the first wife. And I think it will only come. Honestly, I feel like a polygamous marriage becomes toxic especially if it wasn't done correctly.
Yes.
And if it isn't done from a pure place.
Yes.
If it is done from a place of just a man that just loves having several women in his life and so on, then even itself as the marriage, even if I agree to be in the marriage itself will become abusive to me emotionally and mentally and psychologically and so on. However, if it is made to me to understand why I am going into this marriage, remember, polygamy is not like you don't just find yourself as the second wife.
Yes.
It doesn't happen like that. You are informed of the fact that there's a first wife. This is what you're going to do. This is what your position is in this place, and for me to make a conscious decision to say, knowing all of this, I will go into the marriage. It also becomes, and I know that a lot of people will probably find this offensive, it becomes your sole responsibility. You have to take the accountability of however you get affected.
Yes.
Remember, if I am informed of something, I can no longer play victim, especially if I am informed beforehand.
Yes.
Like if a man looks at me and he says, listen, if you don't listen, and I date you, am I still a victim? If I didn't know and I fell in love with you, and then you start to hit me and all of this, and I didn't know, I can lean on the fact that I loved you before I knew that you were abusive.
Yes,
I loved you before. I can say that. That's what would make me an actual victim. However, if I am informed, then I can no longer play victim. So, like I'm saying, it could be abusive, but if I am informed and if it is done correctly and traditionally, then the chances of that happening are very slim.
And also to add on what you're saying, the success rate of, if I were to compare it to the past, was primarily because women weren't given as much opportunities then as they are given now. Okay. Remember, let's say for an example, I'm a husband to two wives. Back then, let's go back to the 1800s, if I may put it like that. Back then, my wives wouldn't go to work or anything. They would actually be in the same environment. And now sometimes when you lock people in the same environment long enough and they walk in as enemies, they might walk out as friends. And so the term sister wives comes from that. Yeah, exactly. Primarily because they are now in a level of understanding and saying, our responsibility is to make the man who we love extremely happy at all costs. So, but now, and it brings us back to this thing of, is South Africa actually ready for polyandry? Much less are we coping with polygamy, because it has already been there. And it puts us in a position where we're like, hey, women, one woman is working that side, the other one is working that side, they hardly have the time to communicate, much less understand one another.
And also remember the whole thing of a woman now working that side and me being a manager and the next woman being a CEO and whatever. What would contribute to a polygamous marriage not succeeding now is that I have replaced a man in my life with money. Yes. Right? I have enough money. I don't need a man. You've heard those type of
I have everything. What are you bringing to the table?
I don't need a man. I am the table. That's the conversation. So that's also why it wouldn't succeed. Because now I'm just like, I don't even need you and your first wife. Go to hell and. As opposed to it then, the sister wives term came from them being able to coexist. And as well as help each other out, because the second wife understands that me as a remember, as a woman, like I could hit the age of like 65, and at that time I'm just like, I don't even want to have sex. Like, no, I'm done. It's okay. That's what a woman would like. Women, we are more than capable of doing that. We are okay with that.
But to answer again the question that you asked, what did you ask again? What was the question again?
like how does like polygamy actually
contribute to its abuse?
To abuse. You said you've come across certain women like that, like who come from polygamous relationships
and
which have been abused. Going back to how women were never really equal to men.
Yes.
I mean, taking it back, I would vouch to say I personally know a lady who actually comes from, and she was unfortunately my grandma.
Okay.
So the thing is, a man would take these women because he feels that he is the man.
Because he can.
And he can take this woman. And understand, through doing that, it's not done because of love. Understand? It's done because I own you. You're my property. Like you said that they would have 3 women to prove that I'm rich like that, or I've made it like that. Understand what I'm saying? So from that, then we would have an abusive husband. Then we would have a husband who says, by 6 o'clock, be in the house cooking. Otherwise, I'm banging this door. Understand what I'm saying? So it's not really from the first wife most of the time. Men do actually change over time in a relationship even and end up really abusing you. You get in there, you are the 6th wife, the youngest one, and all the other 5 wives are just like, your time is coming. And then all of a sudden after 6 months you realize the first slap because you didn't cook beetroot the way he likes it. Understand what I'm saying? So it does come also from the husband.
And to add on what you're saying, when a man is in that particular position, I think in a way it also contributed towards, if men were thinking like that, then the probability is we'd most likely still be thinking like that, and which is actually contributing towards gender-based violence.
That's it.
So the entire concept, now I actually don't want to off-ramp to the main topic, of course, but we need to understand what is healthy, or what are the healthy terms in polygamy, what are the healthy terms in polyandry, and all these things. And in so doing, we'll all have a clear understanding in our positions, not just in the household, but in life in general.
But then, in terms of like abuse, we also actually need to consider the fact that there's emotional abuse.
Yes.
And that's one thing I've realized, which like women in most cases who are actually in these marriages, that's what they tend to go through in most cases, because like attention ya husband husband obvious he has a favorite on solar. I know so emotionally a lot of things are bound to happen to the other wife.
It affects their self-esteem as well.
So those are some of the things we actually need to consider. Like with abuse, it does not need to be like what's this physical abuse and so on, but it can also be like emotionally and so on, psychologically, like you said and so on. Okay, like I get that we have covered like polygamy and polyandry from a man and a woman's perspective. So I want us to actually move the focus to like the kids. I think all of us, maybe in our families, there's that one uncle who has like maybe 2 wives or 3 wives.
No. Our uncles are cool, okay? No.
Definitely.
Our uncles.
So obviously, at Fanela, like one thing I've realized, the kids who actually come from like such families usually don't get along.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
So, what do you think could actually be like the reason for that? Because like at the end of the day, it's the same parent, just different mothers. So what do you think actually fuels the hate amongst the kids?
I think a wise woman, which is my mom, once said, a woman has the strength to create, to build, and to crush. So, if me as the first wife don't get along with the second wife, I have the authority and the power to tell my kids, listen, she's like the worst, this, that, and the other. Or have conversations, inappropriate conversation with my kids about my husband. I can tell my kids, listen, when I was married to your father, the first 5 years were great, and then he cheated, he wanted another wife, and then the wife, they just came in, they bombarded me, this, that, and the other. I have more than enough power to destroy whatever bond these kids could have had just by just by speaking to my kids, speaking ill about the second wife and. So that also comes into play. Whatever relationship that the first wife and the second wife have, you will see that relationship through their kids and how they interact with each other. Yeah.
And it goes back to what you're saying. Basically, what you're saying is a mother is God in the eyes of the child.
Yeah.
So for me, I think the kids sometimes, and I don't know, maybe it's coming from me, but a typical example, there are people out there outside of our actual family name, whom when we just look at from afar, we like, I actually admire and love that particular person. It can also happen within the household. Let me not even paint the scenario of let me just paint the scenario of a polygamous marriage. And let's say Peaches' children actually admire you, Dise, as the mother. Peaches is going to be extremely jealous, and every single thing that she's going to do would be out of malice, primarily because of the effect that you have on her kids, and it can go vice versa as well. So even in a polygamous marriage, a polyandric marriage, it can also apply in the same way. Remember, our society has now developed to a point whereby the likelihood that you might take me whilst I still have a child with another woman is very high. And so my child, who is outside of this wedlock, would actually start looking at how you treat me compared to the second husband or the other husband.
Again, I wanted to say, it also really depends on the father. The minute you said that, when you said that if a single father comes through, now I have a son and I have to take in the son as a stepmother, understand that as in daughter, you must be the one who lays down the rules or the law of your house to say, my children, whether uguti lo uzalo umam Hlongwane or this one was zalad by umam Tembu, at the end of the day, I'm going to treat you guys the same. If this one gets a car for a birthday, this one must get a car for a birthday. Understand? You must just be equal with the children, because the minute you're not, obviously I'm going to look at her children like, oh, go to Tandam. Her children and not mine. And my children are going to look at like, oh, dad really likes auntie's children and not us. And that fuels what? Hatred among siblings.
I think the most important thing also that you have to take into consideration is the vengeance or revenge concept. Right now, we are given so much information and being so empowered with so much information to a point where we're like, if you have to move, you can gladly move and still survive and make it all on your own, instead of actually taking action out of spite, primarily because you were deprived from certain things that another person has given. So the entire mental state will primarily depend, as you're saying, on the head of the house. How he treats, how he pushes the entire family, and the direction at which he's pushing the family should primarily depend on how he actually treats the wives. It has to start there, because the children don't learn from listening. We learn. Even I, as a child, I learned from imitation. How my father actually taught and treated my mother is how I will treat my wife.
Practical example.
Exactly. So that's just my view on things.
I think also in a polyandry marriage, if I were to have kids by two of my husbands, let's just say I have 2 kids, both girls from each husband, and then my second husband loses his job. He's now incapable to, take care or do anything in the family in any way. Guys have the narrative. It's almost evolving now. Guys are like more open to taking care of another man's child, but sorry, it isn't all guys. Sorry. So now, if I'm in that marriage, second husband loses his job. First husband now says, I'm not taking care of these kids, what's going to happen to the kids? They're not going to be able to look at each other the same because now your father is a deadbeat. I don't need, listen, you are beneath me, my dad is working, this, that, and the other. Now I as the wife have to play that role of what their father was doing. However, kids see things. If I know that my father is not working, but I'm getting a car for my birthday and it is posed as if it's from my father, I will know. Or it's from my mom, but you know, they're making it seem like this and that and that. And that's also what would fuel like the hate in the siblings as well. So
guys, okay, let's just take a quick break and we'll be back with more after this break. So we're back again. Hey, as we're about to conclude the real talk with AKAY and this segment, before I actually give you the platform to actually give your closing statements and everything, and I actually have one last question for you guys, and this is one of the questions that I've been meaning to ask ever since the show actually started. It's term, guys, this thing of polygamy. Once the husband actually passes away, why do we have to go to court and start fighting for property while there's a debate about it? Because it's something it's been happening, it's a norm. Majority of these polygamous marriages, that's where they tend to lean to once the husband gets deceased or so. So I would actually love to find out from you, Oguchi, what do you actually think would be the cause for that? Now the wives were getting along, suddenly they are dragging each other to court, fighting for Enyugo and so on. So what do you think is actually the cause of that?
I think when money is involved, you will see if someone really cared about you, they'll tolerate you. So if now wives start going to court and doing so on, arguing about money and all of that, there's a question of how the husband died, first of all, and how the will went the way it did. It's not even about respecting what is on the will and it being what the late husband wanted. It's no longer about that. What's in play is now survival, and also the realization of the fact that the head of the family is gone. Now the provider, if he was the sole provider, is gone. Now you're trying to secure as much as you can for you and your kids so that the next wife doesn't. So it's more really based on survival instinct, I guess, and trying to make sure that you and your kids' future is secured as far as money is concerned.
And I guess on my side, it's more of the state of mind of either one or both. Why am I saying this? Remember, sometimes some people have a slave mentality or a poor or poverty mentality, whereby if you're a slave and you're given a position of power or given the opportunity to acquire power, the first thing that you're going to do is you're actually going to gather things up for yourself and then forget about who's actually suffering or whose toes you're stepping on at the very end, because whatever it is that you're deprived from, now you have the opportunity to seize that. So the psyche and the mentality in that, it can be dangerous, because of the husband may only know what the wife is actually sharing. Upon his death, as to whether from birth to the actual woman that you have encountered, you as the husband have no idea. You have no idea about the psychological outlook that she has in a situation, or how her problem-solving skills are, and her state of mind in terms of something that is beyond her control. So when it comes to that particular statement, it primarily depends on the wife. But in most cases, if a person has a poverty mentality or a slave mentality, these things could drag on for years, and it's going to cause serious problems within a family, regardless of whether it's polygamy or polyandry. It's going to cause serious problems, not just between the mothers, but to the children as well. That's just my thought on things.
Also remembering that a woman can be a safe space and can be a dangerous creature as well. So you could be married to me at the age of 73 and you've had 2 wives and or 23 years and whatever. And I look at you, if I have the poverty mentality, I look at you as a jackpot. I am at liberty to do whatever I can. Remember, you are so close to death's door. You marry me, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm gonna let him hit 4 or 5 times, take him out. At that time, I convince you, pillow talk, convince you, hey, put me in the will. Let me do this, let me do that. Women are more than capable of doing that. I think that's where you underestimate what a woman can do, honestly. Yes. But you should also understand that that's when now you see people going to court and the first wife and the second wife are saying, no, but the third wife only has 5 minutes in the marriage and so you should also consider that. For guys, it's a safety tip. Don't just go around.
Otherwise, we will suffer the consequences when we are happy.
Yeah.
When we are happy in there.
Yeah.
But on jokes aside, I actually like to share something as well, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. And I don't want to mention names, just to be safe. But he was actually talking, and I'm actually adding to your point, he was actually talking about a woman's role and how important a woman is. This man, he actually goes on to illustrate that a woman is actually an incubator, and that every single thing that a man gives a woman, he does not get it the same way. It multiplies. For an example, you give a woman a sperm, she won't give you a sperm back, she'll give you a baby. So even if you give her, even if you annoy her just for 1 minute, she's going to give you hell for the rest of the day. You understand what I'm saying? So it becomes that particular situation where we need to understand, I think I, as a man, need to understand first the existence, but mostly the importance of a woman in my life before I start to mess around with another woman's, another mother's child by actually dragging a second wife into play. I need to understand that we cannot win everything. We can't win them all. Whatever it is that I have, I need to work with, and I need to be appreciated of. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think that's it for this episode, guys. We've reached like the end of our chillers. We're just chilling. And on my side, I've actually gained plenty from you guys today. Right now I'm still going to go home and sit down and digest everything properly. But before I actually do that, let me just give you like one final moment to just like give us your closing statements, like 2 minutes, NG. So I'll start with you, Isis.
In closing, for me, obviously you can never tell a person how to live their lives. You can only share what you believe in. But I think I want to speak particularly on the Black demographic, the youth, is for us to really question why we are so open to being told that our ways of living are wrong, and why our beliefs are wrong, and why our traditions are wrong in our cultures. We should have confidence in being able to go and ask for advice from our grandparents and our parents as well, as opposed to us going on the internet, looking for Google to tell me how to speak to my ancestors and so on. Let's be proactive in securing and protecting our African cultures, as opposed to letting people exploit it, break it down, and demolish it entirely. Let us have something sacred to teach the next generation of kids, and for women and men to not compare each other's powers, but learn how to coexist and own our powers, our strengths. Yeah.
On my side, I said plenty, honestly, and he says I actually covered plenty as well. But on a personal note, I think I'd like to mostly address men in particular. Honestly, we have a tendency, don't want to use the big word, we have a tendency of trying to think that we can own a woman, or we can control a woman. Little, or sometimes we are unaware of the fact that we actually came from one. So this is a personal message from the man to men. Let us learn our women. I think we should start there. Let us learn our women to a point where we actually understand that this is what makes them tick and this is what they're looking for. I remember somebody actually posting something on social media where the celebrity was actually saying that happiness is not pleasure. Happiness is peace.
Yeah.
So let's strive, like Tisa said, in learning how to coexist with one another. But more importantly, let us learn who is suitable for us, who is suitable for me as a man and the qualities that I have, and who has the capability of enhancing these qualities so that I can actually give her something that she can be happy of. If I do not put a smile on a woman's face, then my existence as a man is totally off. Thank you.
I'm smiling already. Okay, good job.
Peaches, do you have anything to add on like what's been said today?
Not really. Just a lot of thank yous for being with us and chilling with us. All the knowledge you shared, that was amazing. I'm just like, what?
It was fun. It was actually fun.
Yeah.
We hope to come back someday.
Trust me, you will. Alright, apart from that, thank you guys, and please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms. On Instagram, it's @realtalkwithakay, on Twitter @realtalkwithakay, Facebook Leone @realtalkwithakay. And those who are actually looking to get in touch or actually share their opinions on this episode, y'all can actually do so on the comment section under YouTube, or you can get in touch with me like via my WhatsApp platform. My numbers are there on all my social media platforms. Apart from that, we out this side. Hey, it's been fun.
Thank you guys.